and welcome to another episode of Truth in Movies. This is going to be episode number 3 of the Rings of Power. I'm excited to talk about this one because there's a lot of symbolic, esoteric, and arcane elements that are involved here. If you remember the last time, we left off with Galadriel, the elven woman over here, and Halbrand, and they were stranded at sea because Galadriel had jumped off of her boat right before entering into the Garden of Paradise, basically, and Halbrand was sort of a refugee, an escapee, and he's from the Southlands. We're going to talk more about these different lands, and we're going to be introduced to a brand new land called Numenor, which we're going to relate to real, actual, mythic, and legendary islands, or mystical islands that were once on our maps during the Middle Age times. Let's check it out. So they're out at sea, sailing about. They were rescued by this group of sailors. Now, these group of sailors are actually from the island of Numenor, which we'll take a look at next. And essentially, they represent a type of Phoenicians. The Phoenician people who were known to be avid sailors, sailed the seven seas, discovered new lands, explored, and very nomadic out on the ocean waters. So that's kind of what these people represent as well. So they were picked up and greeted, and they were said that they were going to be taken back to this island called Numenor, which we'll see here right now. As they go into Numenor, you'll notice that they decided to put fog around the island, right? And this is something I talk about in my new book, Return to Hyperborea, because this is related to Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden, etc. This fog that you'll notice on these mystic or mythic and legendary islands, especially those that are equated to or related to the North Pole area or the Arctic Ocean, or what in the ancient of days was called the Septentrion. These islands are surrounded by fog. Why is that? Because the closer you go beyond the Arctic wind, or the closer you get to Hyperborea, the warmer the lands are. It's said to be eternal springtime, etc. So when you have that warm air rushing off of the island itself, because the islands open up into the inner portion of the earth, and the earth is warm on the inside, so it releases warm air, and that's why it's so warm towards these island regions in the north, according to the myths and the legends. When that warm air meets the cold air of the Arctic, you get fog, and it's always going to be fog that is around the outer edges of the islands, essentially acting as a veil to hide the island. So they go past. You can see there's huge monumental statues and carvings as they go past. You can even make out some of these faces that are in the rock. Now, on one hand, this is a herald and a hearkening back to more beautiful types of architecture where people worked with the earth instead of just digging out of the earth and crushing it up to make concrete and stuff like that. They would work and sculpt the earth as the dwarves did in the Lord of the Rings. But on the other hand, it's also symbolic of instant petrification of gigantic beings, right? And those gigantic beings that were petrified, some pieces of them, many people have noticed, seem to have been left over to our time to become hills, mountains, and other pieces of our landscape. Now, they enter into the island, and Galadriel knows where they are. She says, the land of the star, Numenor, the land of the star, the westernmost of all of the mortal realms. Now, if you follow my content and my books and stuff like that, I teach and talk about esoteric directions. A long time ago, we didn't have the cardinal directions that we have today. East was considered to be upwards towards the heavens or towards the stars, and west was considered to be downward or into the earth, right? This was the westernmost, the closest you can get of the mortal realms, which is the Southlands, essentially, where we live today, or the continents, before you're going to end up at Hyperborea, where you can go down into the earth, basically, at Mount Meru. Now, let's take a look at some of these things. Hold on. She says it's the westernmost. Hold on. I'm going to skip ahead. The island kingdom of Numenor. Here we go. The island of Numenor was shaped like a 5-pointed star, according to Tolkien's lore, right? So this island of Numenor was shaped like a 5-pointed star. Now, I like to study mysterious phantom islands. The internet likes to call them phantom islands. Here is an example, right? There is an example of an island that was shaped like a star, a 5-pointed one if you consider this top portion a point in itself, right? This was called Friesland, right? Not Iceland. And this over here would be Greenland, right? And I believe that this is actually a blown up version so that people can actually see it. The island's probably much smaller than Greenland actually was. But let's zoom in. Let's see. Can I zoom into that? Yeah, let me zoom into this real quick. So you can see this is what the island looked like. And on the bottom here, you can see it's got these points off to the sides, 2 more points, and then sort of a point at the top here. This is just one of many artist depictions of this phantom island called Friesland. Isola de Friesland, or the island of Friesland, basically. Now, what's interesting is that this isn't just the only example. This island, this phantom island, was on over 100 maps dating all the way back to the Middle Ages and beyond. And I find that to be extremely interesting. Let's check some more stuff out about this. Let's see. So they get there. This is not a Tolkien Lord of the Rings map. This is a real world map that we have. Okay, this is our world map where people used to put these islands on there in great detail, and they shared similar structures, mountain ranges, shapes, lakes, rivers, all of this stuff. They were shared from cartographer to cartographer. Now, if you look this up on ChatGPT as I did, or you do some investigation on the internet or your local library or wherever you like to research. I was in a hurry, so I asked ChatGPT. However, I've already done this research. Tell me something about Friesland, the mythic phantom island. It says it was known as being as the land of giants, gigantic people that inhabited this land, right? The closer you get to Hyperborea, the larger the races were said to have been. The Fountain of Youth, another legend associated Friesland with the belief that the island was home to the legendary Fountain of Youth. Now, I will share this. There's more than one Fountain of Youth. There's one great, grand, big Fountain of Youth which comes out of Mount Meru, but there are smaller versions of that pop up all throughout the world. The closer you get towards the North Pole, the larger these fountains tended to be. Now, what is that fountain? I'll tell you in a second. It was also called the Hidden City, Friesland. Some myths described Friesland as a hidden city that could only be accessed by those who possessed secret knowledge or mystical powers. A place of great beauty and wonder with magnificent palaces, gardens, and temples hidden from the outside world. The Lost Library. So it was known to have held a lost library. According to certain legends, Friesland was home to a vast library containing ancient texts and scrolls filled with knowledge and wisdom. Now, in my new book, I discuss these libraries, okay? There are physical libraries where people write things down or catalog things and then they store them physically. But then there is spiritual libraries or energetic accumulation, okay? What I mean by that is that the earth has its own library in the form of vibrations and energy, and it stores the knowledge of the earth, of history, of everything inside of itself and within itself. And when people come in contact with an abundant source of terrestrial energy, then their aura resonates with the aura of that energy, and they have access to what Edgar Cayce appropriately calls the Akashic Records, okay? The Curse of Friesland. The Curse of Friesland. There are tales of a curse that befell those who attempted to find Friesland. It was said that anyone who dared to venture too close to the island would be met by misfortune and disaster. This is because, my theory on this is, that Friesland and Numenor in the stories is a magnetic island. It's a lodestone island. It is an island that has a very large plasma volcano. And I don't believe that the one in the movie, in the Rings of Power, this is Friesland from, let me finish my first thought. I don't believe that the one in the movie represents Hyperborea itself. That is the land of the elves, as we discussed earlier. This one is the closest island that has a plasma volcano to Hyperborea, where the humans could still go and reside. The closest one to the Southlands, right? And I discuss all of this in great detail in my brand new book, which I'm about to release. All right, so this is an example. If you look at Mercator's map of the Arctic, which shows you Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden, etc., right? You can see this is Friesland over here, the island that sort of kind of resembles a five-pointed star, just like in the Rings of Power, right? So she says, the island kingdom of Numenor. It was shaped like a five-pointed star, and at the exact center. Now we're shifting over back to fantasy, okay, to the movie. This is Numenor. Okay, so this is the reality. Boom, right there, a little uglier. This is the cartoonified version of the reality. And right smack in the middle of Tolkien's Numenor, we find a huge, gigantic mountain. What was it called? Let's see. Menel Tarma. Mount Menel Tarma. This was a holy mountain where the locals, which were basically demigods, worshipped Iluvatar, the creator god of J.R. Tolkien, right? All right, now check this out. If you look up the etymology of the made-up Elvish language that Tolkien just made up an entire language for his books, Meneltarma is Kenya, which is Elvish, basically, for pillar of heaven, from Menel, which means firmament, and Tarma, which means pillar. This is a plasma volcano right there smack in the middle of the island where it should be, because all that land is going to be pulled towards that energetic source, you know, pulling it together as it's electromagnetically attracted to that beam of energy that comes up out of the earth, or Middle Earth, or whatever, right? It's actually called a pillar of heaven. Super interesting, just like how we talk about with the sky pillars that reached up in real life. Menel Tarma, and the summit of this mountain, this fictional mountain, was flattened and broad, right? The top of it was basically just like the Giant's Causeways, the Devil's Tower, right? Those basalt columns that pull all the way up and then suddenly stop or whatnot, right? Now, they pull on in. You can see that they're flanked by these two large statues of these guys holding up the roof, this is symbolic of the pillars of Hercules, right? The pillars of Heracles, Hercules. These are the two beams that come out of the anode and cathode sides on the outside of Hyperborea. Okay, Hyperborea has its own many different plasma volcanoes, the largest of which is at the exact center, just like it showed there, and that's Mount Meru. But on the outlying islands, there are anode and cathode islands that shoot up their electricity and receive their electricity respectively. And that's what these are, the pillars of Hercules. When you go between those legs of this gigantic creature, which we'll talk more about in just a second, when you go between those plasma legs, you're going between and beyond the pillars of Hercules to more land when it's there, or nothing beyond when it's the Arctic Ocean and everything's flooded. Now, here's an example of Numenor. You can see the holy mountain right back there in the background. This is where the pillar would shoot up out. It's not a pillar, it's a mountain, right? Which reminds me, like, that so many people believe that the pillars of Hercules are like some mountain, the Rock of Gibraltar, and some like three maybe unknown other mountains. They're not sure. The mountain is not the pillar. The beam of light is the pillar. The mountain is what produces the pillar of light, because it's a plasma volcano. You can see also they have the eternal flame symbolism over here, giant symbolism, Colossus and Titan symbolism, etc. Now let's take a look at that Titan or Colossus, right? Reminds me of the Colossus of Rhodes. Many people have heard of this, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Many people, especially if you watch the History Channel and stuff like that, they really try to spin this. It's interesting to me to see like what's a gray area within academics and what is accepted and what they really try to make real. They really try to make the Colossus of Rhodes this gigantic Statue of Liberty sized statue that sort of flanked the harbor entrance with its legs, and it was made of bronze, they say, right? So this was I have a different idea. I have a different theory. Okay, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying I have another idea, another perspective, something else to consider. This is how it's traditionally portrayed. Now, nobody knows, Okay, there's no solid concrete evidence. There's no debris from this statue when it was taken down or fell down or whatever. There's a lot of speculation when it comes to the Colossus of Rhodes. This is how it's typically portrayed, with its leg touching one entrance and one side and its other leg touching the other, and the people would go between the legs into the port of the city of Rhodes, right? Etc. Now, sometimes they showed this Colossus wearing different things, sporting different things. Almost every time, in every depiction, it was holding onto a light. Okay, just like the Statue of Liberty, because she represents the exact same thing. She, he, whatever it is, okay? Represents the exact same thing as the Colossus of Rhodes. It's symbolic of, now this is my perspective and theory, it's symbolic of the blue beam of light that shoots up out of Mount Meru, the anode and cathode that reach up and form the Hyperborean electrical arc that make the legs, basically. And you have this huge, gigantic, quintessential first man, or Adam Kadmon. You have this huge spirit man, stick figure in the sky that people see. And when you go between those legs, you are entering into the mystical land, paradise, the Hyperborean lands, etc., right? According to tradition, it was the statue that was made of actual metal and stuff, they say, was 33 meters high. So 33, Mount Meru was said to be 33 miles in diameter. So 33 is associated with Mount Meru and paradise itself, being, you know, the diameter of the actual plasma volcano at the center of the world. 33 meters high. The Rhodians, those of Rhodes, right, which they say was in, modern academics will attribute that to modern day Turkey, but if you listen to my channel, you understand that I have a theory that all of these modern place names were actually renamed in honor of the original places where these people migrated from when they left the center of the world, right? So the Rhodians were actually called Colossians. If you read the Bible in the New Testament, then that word might sound familiar as one of the books of the Bible, right? People wrote letters to the Colossians, which literally means giants. Interesting, right? Now, they say it was made out of brass, this Colossus of Rhodes. Now, brass, people, you know, it's similar to copper and stuff, sort of a brown metal, etc., right? If you look up, let's look this up, right? Because it's directly related to my theory on what the Colossus really was. It's also been, the word has also been compared to the old Swedish word brasa, which means fire. So the word brass was called such because it shined like light. Okay, so this is where things got twisted and mixed up in the old world. There was light, and then there was things that reflected light. And over time, the things that reflected light were named after the actual light itself. So brasa and brass have a correlation. Brass is directly related to bronze. Bronze has a connection to the Venetian word bronza, which means glowing coals, light. Or the German Brunst, which means fire. Brunn. You see that brunn right there? Bronza and brunsta. It's directly related to where our modern English word brown comes from. Or burn. Same exact word when you go back. They have the same origin. Burn means to shine, glitter, sparkle, glow like fire, right? Not to actually burn something with fire, but originally it just meant shining, right? That's where the word brown comes from. Brun or ber. If you look up the etymology of brown, you'll find that it's directly related to this word right here, which is ber. The Proto-Germanic word is brunaz for brown. Brunaz. Az just means strong or very strong or strong with, right? Or a whole bunch of. So a whole bunch of brown, the color? No. A whole bunch of shine, which is what it really meant, okay? Ber, brown. This is related to our word for cities like Berg, like, you know, Duckburg or whatever from DuckTales, right? Berg means shine, where the lights are, where all the city lights and stuff like that are. Actually, originally it was the burgs, the cities, were settlements around these pillars of light or places of power, as I describe in my books. All right, next up. So we've got the Colossus of Rhodes standing on either side. This is really, one foot was on one island, the other foot was on the other island, anode and cathode, creating an electrical arc between the two. in an electrolytic cell at the top of the world, sometimes a galvanic cell. They switch every other epic. Now, here's an inscription that was said to have been written on the Colossus of Rhodes, or upon the mountain, right? And there's many legends that indicate that there's some sort of mystical, heavenly, holy, spiritual writing upon these holy mountains. Probably the most popular one are the tablets that were given to Moses and etched out of Mount Sinai, right? But then you also have like the emerald tablets of Thoth and many other examples of this, okay? So here's what it says. The legends say this. To you, O sun, the people of Dorian Rhodes set up this bronze statue or fiery image reaching to Olympus. Now that's an interesting way to state that. The statue reaching to Olympus, or an image reaching up to the heavens, right? When they had pacified the waves of war and crowned their city with the spoils taken from the enemy, not only over the seas, but also on land, did they kindle, which means to light up, the lovely torch of freedom and independence, another light association. For to the descendants of Heracles belongs dominion over sea and land. Heracles, also held up the sky for a portion of time, according to the legends, according to the different labors, the 7 labors of Hercules or Heracles. He took the place of Atlas or Atul-Oz, right, who held up the sky for a moment at the very least. So those who would go between the pillars of Hercules, or the legs of Hercules, however you want to see it, right? Or those who came out of there, those are the ones who have dominion over the sea and the land. The Phoenicians, or the Tartarians, or whatever you want to call them, the people that came from these northern island, mythic and phantom legendary lands. So here's another example of it. That's why it's holding the light. It's also holding an arrow symbolically, because the arrow of any god, almost always I've found, represents the beam of light that shoots up, and it's almost always shot at the sky or at the firmament or at some sort of monster in the air or something like that, or at a dragon or whatever, because it's that singular blue beam of good terrestrial earth energy that shoots up and appears to be hitting the red ionized plasma that comes down and spreads out as it, looks to ground itself like lightning does. Here's an example, right? This is just an artist rendition, right? I like this one of the Squatterman image, stick figure seen in the sky from a distance. That central blue beam shooting straight up. Here you have the Hyperborean electrical arc from anode to cathode and vice versa. You have little toroidal fields off to the side. And then once that beam gets close enough to the inverted dome at the top, or the apex of the firmament, it conforms to its shape. So it spreads out. And you have, and then this will create little auroras around it, creating little cosmic bird images and stuff like that. I just got a $20 donation from Susan Donahue. Let me heart that. Thank you so much, Susan. That was very kind of you. Here's another artist rendition, right? You can see this. These are actual plasma formations that were created in laboratories when people tried to replicate these rock formations, or these petroglyphs found the world across. Right? This is what an artist imagines people actually saw. So they carved out the most important event, the most significant thing in history that begins and ends recorded time, and how we keep track of epic and ages. Here's another video rendition of it as well, surrounded by the auroras. Here's a good one. It says, ever wonder why petroglyphs like this appear all over the world, right? All across the realm. These are all the Squatterman images, or the stick figure. This is the Adam Kadmon, the original spirit man that people saw emanating from the earth, or being born from Mother Nature. Now, this is from the Bible, Revelation chapter 10. Then I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, wrapped in a cloud, like a rainbow above its head. His face was like the sun, not the sun, but like the sun. And his legs were pillars of fire, brass, brazen, illuminated, light, plasma. He held in his hand a small scroll, which he lay open. He placed his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. That's also indicative of when you look at an electrolytic cell and how those things work. Electrolysis, right? You've got one metal node on this side, one metal node on this side, and you run a current between the two. One gives its energy to the other one receives it, the other one's a giver, okay? One gets smaller and smaller, and it shrinks and it actually loses pieces of itself. That metal starts to degrade and fall apart, so it will sink into the water, right? The other one will grow, it will gain more land, it will gain more energy, etc. So one is positive, one is negative. Here you have the angel, the energetic, gigantic, titanic angel or whatever. One land coming out of the ocean, the other one coming out of the land, right? Anode and cathode. And if you look at Numenor, it's pretty much all white, right? We also see this evidenced within electrolysis, right? When, like I said, you have one giving away energy from itself, right? So one metallic object, typically, giving away energy, the other one taking it and receiving energy and building actual mass. So if you look it up, it says here, this is just one example, okay? Anode, black. In galvanic cells, the anode is the electrode where oxidation occurs. It typically loses electrons and undergoes corrosion and dissolution. This would be your island of death and decay, or evil, or however you want to see it. Depending upon the specific metal or material that's used in the anode, it may develop a darker coloration due to oxidation. Inversely, on the other node, the cathode, white. In contrast, the cathode in galvanic cells is the electrode where reduction occurs. It typically gains electrons, energy, and may undergo plating, which is typically called electroplating, or deposition of a different material, or metal, I'm sorry. Depending on the specific materials involved, the cathode may appear lighter or even white in color. So typically you will have, at least in myths and legends and, you know, fantasy as it's portrayed on TV, the good versus the evil, the white versus the black, the light and the dark, which, by the way, they switch every other one, okay? So it goes from an electrolytic cell to a galvanic cell. Anyways, they switch, they go back and forth. So this is the island of white, a white island. One of these anode and cathode islands, if my theory is correct, should be mostly white. And I talk about this extensively in my new book. I'm so excited. The other one should be black, okay? Ish, okay? They can still have greenery and grow stuff and, you know, whatever. They can have other colors, but the majority of it should look something like that, okay? And that's what we're being shown. Now, Halbrand. Halbrand gets to the island, and by the way, his name is basically Hell Sigil. Halbrand, basically, for good reason. Since when did men like me build kingdoms such as this? He asks when they get to Numenor. And Galadriel says, these men are not like you. And she's correct. The men of Numenor, the people, okay, the humans of Numenor, they live for hundreds of years, longer than your average person like Halbrand from the Southlands. That's where we live, essentially making us children in comparison to those who live for hundreds of years, right? And I talk about secondary stages of or further stages of puberty and stuff as a person's lifespan is extended beyond 100 years, right? So these humans that live close to the Garden of Eden but not in it, they still benefit because they live, you know, on an island that's just pure energy emanating from the center of it. Now, there's one of their temples. Notice the dome. Notice this copper looking dome. And there's another one over here. I think I got a picture of that too, right? They have a waterfall right here. This is not just all pretty. This is practical. This is how buildings used to be built. Practical. And they would work with the electricity that was abundant in the atmosphere during different times, right? So on an island that's electrically charged, that has a huge plasma volcano shooting up out of it, I would expect to see things like this where they can harness that energy. Metallic domes attract energy from the atmosphere. They will attract lightning. They'll get hit by lightning way more than any spires or rods or anything like that, right? So this was designed to harness electricity, to pull it towards a certain spot so that it may be redirected and manipulated and used. Water is also something you'll find in a lot of these areas, especially little causeways and pathways and stuff like that, to keep their capacitors and stuff like that cool, basically. They need to cool them off, so you need a huge water supply. Anyways, So this is what it looks like. Boom. Oh, and then you see, if you zoom in right here, there's a little tree, a white tree representing the white island. And notice these little columns and pillars all the way around it. These are VOVs. This is the beam of light shooting up and splitting as it goes up to the top. They're light pillars, right? This is what it does in the atmosphere. It shoots up as a solid terrestrial beam, etc. Now, inside of Numenor, the guards and many others are wearing chainmail and metallic pointy armor and stuff around their heads. We talk about this quite often. You see this mostly in the Renaissance or Middle Ages and Dark Ages, right? In our actual real history. That's because that's a time whenever our real atmosphere was electrically charged, right? There was different events that happened, like the one that recently just happened, where they're blaming the sun and saying, oh, it's solar storm or whatever, where the auroras, I'm going to talk about this way more on Tuesday, okay, when we do our Omen segment. But the auroras just were seen by like most of the Northern Hemisphere, basically. Another Carrington event is going to happen, way more stronger, way bigger, etc. But anyways, that's what happens. That's what people see when the atmosphere is electrically charged. People also wear this for protection, not against humans, not for battling anybody. This is stupid to battle anybody, okay? Like, it's not practical at all. It is practical if you're trying to, you know, create a little Faraday cage for your body. It's also why they walk around with these metallic pikes, okay, like this guy in the background. Those are lightning rods, which do not attract lightning. They make it less inclined to strike, okay, because they dissipate all of the negative electrons above you, basically. So it doesn't mean lightning cannot strike if you have a lightning rod, but that's not what lightning rods are for, okay? Rods, pointed metallic objects like that, lessen the chances of electricity zapping you. So that's why I believe a lot of these people walked around in that type of armor and carried that around. Also notice this little sun symbol. They're not sun worshippers, okay? This little sun right there, that's not the sun. When you see a circle like that with little wavy lines coming out of the corona, okay, that's not sunlight. Sunlight goes in a straight line, okay? So the sun is represented by little straight lines around a circle. That is the inverted dome at the top of the world where plasma seeps out. Okay, that's plasma all the way around. I know it's easy to confuse the two, and people are like, oh no, it's fire from the sun. No. Light from the sun should be portrayed as straight lines. Okay, and that's not the sun whatsoever. That is something else. Anyways, so here's the island of Numenor from a distance. You can see the holy mountain, and then a voice whispers to another character, Isildur, which we meet. I'll tell you more about him in a second. Now, this is also something that people have wrote in their legends across time, is hearing voices around these mythic islands. They would say that they're possessed, or that the islands are haunted by ghosts, etc. People hear things in their own minds, not physically with their ears. They pick up on frequencies the closer they get, right? I'm not going to get too deep into that right now. So here's Isildur. Now, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll remember from the actual Lord of the Rings when Sauron was in that big war and he had a giant ring on his finger as a ring of power, right? Somebody cut that ring off of his hand. This was the ring. This is the moment when he was going to grab that guy. Well, that guy was Isildur, right? Took this broken sword of Sauron, cut off Sauron's finger, and that's how that's how he got the ring, basically. All right. Now, here's the white tree, and the Queen of Numenor says, the faithful believe that when the petals of the white tree fall, this is symbolic of those beams starting to loosen as they go through flux during that age, and those trees, okay, or beams or whatever, start to go into flux and move about, and then they'll actually retract. It's no idle thing. So she's talking about signs, omens, wonders, which I also believe in and I also talk about and consider and look out for. Here's another one you can see right here. Boom, boom. The domes or whatever. Numenor. So now we're going to go from Numenor, which is the star-shaped island that has a plasma volcano smack dab in the middle of it. And we'll scooch across the sundering seas, which means the seas that are separated, right? Separate seas, seas that are different from the other seas, or quite literally divided, the divided seas. Reminds me of the Red Seas. To the Southlands, where we are today, right? This is the northern hemisphere, okay? This is like Russia, Canada. Those are the Southlands, basically. Now, we get back to this elf. Remember him from the last ones? He's been captured by the orcs. Remember last time I showed you he was underground trying to figure out who dug those tunnels? Well, it was the orcs. Now, next episode, we're going to learn way more about orcs. But the orcs had put him into bondage, put him into slavery, and they're having him dig all over the place. They show you this orc in particular, which also he wears a little spiky metal piece on the top. Not because he likes to headbutt people, and that's one of his special moves when he kills people in war. That's dumb. Okay? Military people did not wear spikes on their heads just for decoration. It's counterintuitive to battle. Somebody could just throw a rope around your little head, you know, pull your little head down or whatever, and like that thing is connected to your helmet, so it's counterintuitive to even have that in a battle. Okay, so no, that's not to headbutt and, you know, kill people. Anyways, this orc wearing all white, we'll talk about more about them next time. The sun comes out, directly hits this orc, and he's like, ah. He starts burning like a vampire, right? There's a good reason for that. And there's a good reason why they show you the contrast between the dark elf and the orc that's like powdery white. We're going to talk more about that next time. But this is called photophobia. Real photophobia, okay? Some of us have photophobia. I have photophobia, which is passed on genetically through our DNA. But originally, going far back in time, the first people that arrived here that were not used to this type of a bright point of focus called sunlight or whatever, that sunlight would burn their skin. They would get burnt, and people with photophobia, they can get bloodshot eyes, and sunlight messes them up. And this is where the legends of vampires and stuff come from, which are elves. Essentially, vampires are elves, and elves are many other things too. Okay, it's all just creative, symbolic cartoonification. Now, they're working for the orcs, and they're talking about the rumors, and they're searching for something. These orcs are digging all over the place looking for something, right? Relics, holy relics, old world technology. This branches out into many different things. Okay, one, the orcs and even modern day governments and stuff, they're looking for the Garden of Eden. They're looking for terrestrial energetic sources of energy that are limitless. Okay, that's the main thing they're looking for. It's also called the Spear of Destiny or Excalibur, etc. But other things they're looking for is old world technology that wasn't destroyed or buried deep down under miles of mud or whatever, or sucked up out of our atmosphere during atmospheric depressurization. They're looking for old world relics, which are technology that can be reverse engineered and used to help them to gain more power. Some sort of weapon, perhaps, says the elf. Here's the orcs. You can see them, that fantasoid white color that I talk about, right? Sort of a chalky, pasty, whitish color. That's the color of the Anunnaki. That's the color of the beings that fall down from the heavens, etc. White devils, some people refer to them as, sometimes appropriately. There's a tree in the way. They're digging for these relics and stuff. They're actually making paths as well. Anyways, there's a tree in the way. The elf is like, all the elves are like, we're not cutting this tree down. It's messed up. This tree's been alive longer than you have. And the orcs disregard that. So they make him chop it down. As you can see, they have cleared out the forests all over the place. Now, this is basically symbolic of those who are related to the orcs. These people. This is just cartoonified, okay? In our modern world. That you could tell who's related because those people in charge of our world go around doing this. They go around destroying, deforestation or whatever it's called, deforestation, right? Chopping down all the trees instead of working with the trees. The trees do provide substance. They do provide building material. They do provide food and stuff like that. But there's no need to chop the whole damn thing down. You know what I mean? Then if you chop it all down, it can no longer provide all of that stuff. It's counterintuitive. But these are the children of Satan. These are evil people. Okay, basically their souls, their spirits, their energy that makes the rest of them, okay, is negatively charged. And we go through these different periods where most of the world is full of people whose souls are negatively charged, and there's a remnant of people that are the opposite. And then that'll flip over, and most of the world will be positively charged, and there'll be a remnant of negatively charged evil people. So Galadriel talks to the guy who saved him and the captain of this boat, and he's like, she learns that they have a hall of lore, which is what we were talking about. Any place where there's this plasma volcano or holy mountain, they're going to have a hall of lore or a great library or something like that because it's spiritual in nature. Okay, it's a energetic record keeping. Now they go to this hall of lore and look at I just wanted to share this, like the land, right, of what it looks like. Now, modern academics and people who were under that delusion, they will see this and they will believe in their minds and their with all their being, heart, and soul that this pillar right here, that the land used to be way up there, and then water swooshed around, and it just slowly made the land come down, and now all that mountain is beach. Right? Same thing with this over here, but instead of it, being a pillar or whatever, like maybe a river must have the water must have pushed against that mountain so much that it created a hole in the side of the mountain, and now it's just like that. No, I disagree. Okay, I offer a different perspective, which is this is electrical arcing. This is electricity from the cosmos, from the heavens during an event where the firmament opens up, right? Ionized hydrogen comes down from above, negatively charged, and the positive charge of the earth pulls up the sand and the mud and the debris and stuff, and then they meet in the air and it petrifies it. And sometimes you have electrical arcing where it goes straight up and down and it also petrifies, and you get an arc, an actual arch made out of rock, etc. Let's see. Now they realize the Southlands are in grave danger because Sauron is returning, basically, right? So this is the time of magic. This is the time of power all over the place, mythic phantom islands, etc. This is showing you our history, what things used to be like that we have forgotten about, and which I call ancient oblivion. A long time ago, right? Sauron returning means the modern world is on the way. Okay, it's the devil, basically. If Sauron has indeed returned, they need to go find him and protect the Southlands, etc. Which is what many of them do. They disperse from those Hyperborean lands. They come out to our lands out here, and they become leaders and stuff like that. Now we get back to the Harfoots. The Harfoots are holding this mourning ceremony where they're mourning the loss of those who have died during their last migration. The Harfoots have to migrate. This coincides basically with the apocalyptic cycles, the return of Sauron, etc. And these migrations, these Harfoots, as I described, represent modern survivors. Okay, we're little people right now. We're small in stature, and we have big old feet. Okay, we're basically Harfoots. And he says, in life we could not wait for them, those who fell behind. So there will be migrations. Okay, Mother Nature will force people to move. She already is. Okay, you notice it's getting way hotter. You notice a lot of people are starting to, especially governments and stuff, are starting to go further north and start to try to settle the Arctic lands and the Arctic Ocean and stuff like that. Yeah, there's going to be migrations, especially if the sun heats up as hot as I believe it's going to. And should any Harfoot fall behind in this migration, blah, 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 they're basically saying don't look back. Okay, this is shown to you in the Bible where Lot, right, the cousin of Abraham, I believe, he's told to leave his city because an apocalyptic event is on the way, or a cataclysmic event is on the way. Don't look back. You need to migrate. Don't stop for anybody. You keep on going. When the door opens, when that window of opportunity arrives, and the wise will know when that is, you go and you don't stop. You just go get there as fast and as quick as you can because you only have a window of opportunity. Next up. Oh, this is the giant. Remember we saw that giant, the old man that fell out of the sky? He's looking for this constellation right here, which we referred to in our last episode. I'm not gonna tell everyone who the giant is. Some people might know, but it's kind of obvious. But I'll show you. I'll share with you later. All right. So the Harfoots, they say, "Have you ever tell of beings falling from the stars?" He says, "I've heard of beings who were turned into stars, but not the other way around." Right? So those the beings that come down to the stars, also people that get sucked up into the heavens, and then the stars appear, etc. Now Galadriel, Halbrand got into a fight, so he's in jail in Númenor. And Galadriel says, a man bearing that mark united the scattered tribes of the Southlands under one banner. So a long time ago, there was a worldwide war. There always is. Okay, every time there's an apocalyptic cycle, there's a war that's forced upon everybody when all these different species and types of humanoids and monsters and insects and aliens and giants and all this stuff all return all at one time. And everybody's freaking out. They don't know who's good, who's bad, and there's a lot of fighting that happens, basically. That's just a short version, all right? United the scattered tribes of the Southlands under one banner. That banner is the blue beam. That very banner might unite them again today against the evil that now seeks to claim their lands, your lands, Halbrand. Now, I'm gonna tell you, I'll give a tiny spoiler alert. Halbrand's evil. Okay. I'm not gonna tell you who the giant is, but I will tell you Halbrand is not a good dude. It all depends on your perspective, okay? But he's portrayed later on as being not a good dude, okay? So what this is showing you the switching back and forth. Remember how I said the lands towards the north act as like sometimes a galvanic cell, sometimes an electrolytic cell, etc. The positive and the negative take turns and take ownership of the earth and of the lands and of plasma volcanoes and other such things, right? They reverse because we go through polarity shifts in the world. So Halbrand just represents the negative taking charge. This is his actual brand, right? This is a type of the blue beam, the VOB, that shoots up and hits that inverted dome on the top up there, represented by this circle, or that's the real moon, however you want to see it. This is the beam of energy shooting up, boom, branching out, wrapping around it, and creating those aurora-like wings of a cosmic bird. Here's the giant. We don't hear much about him in this episode, except for the Harfoots. They were trying to keep him a secret, right? Brandy Harfoot or whatever her name was. But it's hard to keep a giant a secret in the land of little people. So they realize that he's there. The little Harfoot girl, her dad has a broken ankle. So like they're going to fall behind during the migration. But then she realizes, well, he can actually help us. He's a giant and he can help us to move the wagon and we can keep up with the others. We can put the dad in the wagon and we'll be fine, right? So it's a symbiotic relationship between giants and little people, right? Which is what we have every cycle. Now, that dark elf, he's up there trying to cut down the tree, etc., and they sick these devil dogs, these hellhounds, these mutant dogs on the other elves, right? And take a good look at this, right? Because I want to show you this is real. We have had these in the past. I call them devil dogs, hellhounds, whatever. I believe they're terrestrial. They come up from inside of the earth. Some animals come up from within the earth, some drop down and float down during the depressurization. Okay, they don't fall, they float. But if you take a look at megafauna that lived during the quote-unquote Ice Age period, which they say is 10,000 years ago, but the timeline's all messed up, you have stuff like this, right? This is called the Daedon, right? Which is basically this right here cartoonified, right? And these are all artist depictions, okay? You have these giant, sometimes they call them hell pigs or whatever, but these are devil dogs and might even be the ancestral origin of actual domesticated dogs in our world, right? So they'd show you this, okay? This is what animals were way gigantic back then. Those dogs had to be tamed. And it's interesting because if you research the Tartarian Empire or race, they will say that they brought gigantic dogs with them. So he's attacked, they put a knife to his throat, and then they're like, don't kill him yet, take him to our leader, bring him to Adar. And then all the orcs are chanting in this little covered hut, Adar, or Adar, or whatever, right? Which is this orc, which we'll meet next time. He's a special orc, right? But you'll have to tune in next time to find out more about who he is. Thanks for joining me during this episode of Truth in Movies. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
Who